The mop hit the linoleum with a wet slap that echoed through the empty corridor of Fort Carson's administrative building. 5:47 a.m. The base was still sleeping, which was exactly how Evangeline Thorne preferred it. Invisible. Forgettable. Just another woman in a faded gray uniform pushing dirty water across government floors. She'd learned to become a ghost 6 years ago. It wasn't difficult. 35 years old auburn hair pulled back in a regulation bun, wearing the same worn work boots 5 days a week. She mopped the same floors, emptied the same trash cans, nodded at the same soldiers who never bothered to learn her name. That was the point. Invisible women didn't get asked questions. Invisible women didn't have to explain the scar that ran along their collarbone, barely visible above their shirt collar. Invisible women could pick up 8-year-old girls from elementary school at 3:15, help with homework at 4, and be in bed by 9 without anyone wondering where they'd been for the 8 years before that. Evangeline Thorne liked being invisible. It was the only way she knew how to stay human. But invisibility was a fragile thing, and somewhere in the back of her mind, in the place where muscle memory and tactical awareness lived, she knew it couldn't last forever. Nothing ever did. Fort Carson sat 40 miles outside Colorado Springs, close enough to civilization for decent schools, far enough to feel like its own world. Evangeline had chosen it carefully 6 years ago when she'd known it needed to disappear. The irony wasn't lost on her, hiding on a military base surrounding herself with soldiers every day. But that was the trick, wasn't it? Nobody expects a phoenix to nest in the ashes of the fire that consumed it. Besides, the job had benefits. Health care for Iris, a small apartment in base housing, and most importantly, a schedule predictable enough that an 8-year-old girl never had to wonder when the only parent she had left was coming home. That had been Lieutenant Abigail Crane's last request, whispered through blood-soaked lips on a Syrian rooftop 6 years ago. "Promise me she'll always know you're coming back," Evangeline had promised. 6 years later, she still kept it. The morning of October 14th started like every other. Evangeline woke at 5 a.m. Old habits died hard. Some never died at all. She made Iris's lunch with the precision of a military operation: peanut butter and honey sandwich cut diagonally, apple slices in a sealed container, 2 chocolate chip cookies hidden at the bottom, because Iris would smile when she found them, and that smile was worth more than anything Evangeline had done in her previous life. She ironed Iris's school uniform while the girl slept. Navy blue jumper, white collared shirt. Everything pressed in perfect because Abigail would have wanted it that way, would have insisted on it. Lieutenant Crane had been many things. Sloppy was never one of them. At 6 a.m., Evangeline opened the bedroom door quietly. Iris was curled under her blankets, dark hair spread across the pillow, one small hand clutching the stuffed rabbit that had been her mother's. Even in sleep, she held on to the past. Evangeline understood that impulse better than most. "Iris, time to wake up, sweetheart." A muffled groan emerged from beneath the covers. "5 more minutes. That's what you said 5 minutes ago." "Then I need 10 more. Evangeline smiled despite herself. The girl had inherited her mother's negotiation skills along with her green eyes. "Tell you what, get dressed in 3 minutes and we'll stop at Murphy's Diner for waffles before school." Iris's head popped out from under the blanket, eyes suddenly alert. "With the little syrup cups, as many as you want." The girl was dressed in 2 minutes and 40 seconds. Another trait from her mother. Give Abigail Crane a clear objective and a tight timeline, and she'd move heaven and earth to accomplish it. She'd done exactly that on a dozen missions, right up until the last one. Murphy's Diner at 6:30 a.m. was a study in military hierarchy painted in breakfast foods and bad coffee. Officers clustered near the windows, the good tables with natural light and a view of the parade grounds. Senior enlisted took the middle section, trading complaints about paperwork and weekend duty rosters over eggs that had been sitting under heat lamps too long. Junior enlisted grabbed whatever tables were left, eating fast before morning physical training turned their stomachs. And civilians sat wherever they could find space without bothering anyone. Evangeline guided Iris to a corner booth near the kitchen, far from the windows, close to the exit. Old instincts. She'd positioned herself with her back to the wall before she even realized she was doing it. Some training went deeper than conscious thought. It lived in the spine, in the way muscles tensed when strangers entered peripheral vision, in the automatic calculation of threat assessment and egress routes. "Miss Evie, why do we always sit here?" Evangeline had stopped correcting Iris months ago. The girl couldn't quite manage the formality of calling her Evangeline, and Mom felt like a betrayal of Abigail's memory. So Miss Evie it was, a compromise between the woman who'd given birth and the woman who'd raised. Because it's cozy. Emily's dad says corners are for people who don't have friends. Emily's dad talks too much. Iris giggled, the sound bright and pure. Then her face changed. The shadow that crossed an 8-year-old's features when memory interrupted joy. Mom always said. She stopped. The word hung in the air between them like smoke. Evangeline reached across the table and took the small hand in hers. What did Mom say? She said some people fill silence with noise because they're scared of what they'll hear if they listen. Your mother was the smartest person I ever knew. Smarter than you. Much smarter than me. Iris smiled, but her eyes carried grief like someone much older. That was Evangeline's fault. She tried to shield the girl from the worst of it, from the truth about how Abigail had died and why. But children saw everything. They just processed it differently and filed it away in places adults couldn't reach until years later when therapy bills started arriving. I miss her, Iris said quietly. Me too, sweetheart. Every single day. The waffles arrived with 4 small syrup cups exactly as promised. Evangeline watched Iris arrange them in a perfect row before opening the first one. The girl had rituals for everything, a way of creating order in a world that had shown her how quickly things could fall apart. How a mother could leave for work one morning and never come home. How promises of "see you soon" could become lies without anyone meaning them to be. Evangeline understood. She had her own rituals, the way she checked every exit when entering a room, the way she positioned silverware so it could be grabbed quickly if needed as an improvised weapon, the way she never ever sat with her back to a door. Miss Evie, yes. Why do people stare at your neck sometimes? Evangeline's hand moved unconsciously to her collarbone. The scar there was faded now, 6 years old, but still visible if you knew where to look. A souvenir from Kandahar. Or maybe it was the Helmand Province operation. The missions blurred together after a while, all blood and sand, and the scope reticle centered on targets who never saw death coming. Because it looks different. Does it hurt? Not anymore. How did you get it? She'd rehearsed this answer 100 times. Practiced it in the mirror until it sounded natural, unrehearsed, the comfortable lie of someone with nothing to hide. I was in an accident a long time ago, before you were born. What kind of accident? The kind that teaches you to be more careful. Iris studied her with those green eyes. Abigail's eyes, sharp and impossible to lie to. You always say that, but you never tell me what really happened. Because some stories are for when you're older. How much older? Old enough to understand that sometimes good people have to do hard things. Iris considered this while drowning her waffle in syrup. The liquid pooled golden in the squares overflowing onto the plate. Exactly how Abigail used to eat them. The memory hit Evangeline like a gut punch, sudden and sharp and gone just as quickly. Is that why you have the tattoo, the one you hide? Evangeline's blood went cold. Ice water replacing every warm thought she'd had that morning. She kept that tattoo covered, always. Long sleeves in summer. Careful attention to how her arms moved. A watch band positioned precisely to obscure the edge of the ink. Where did you see that? Last week when you were fixing the sink, your sleeve came up. What did it look like? A bird made of fire with 9 feathers? It was pretty, like something from a story. Phoenix 9, her call sign, her designation, her identity for 8 years of missions that officially never happened in countries where America officially never operated. 67 confirmed kills. Each one carefully logged in classified files that 36 people had died to keep buried. The bird had been symbolic. The 9 was practical. Radio protocol, target identification, legacy. It's just something from when I was younger, Evangeline said carefully. From a job I used to have. What job? I helped people. Like a doctor. Something like that. Iris accepted this with the easy trust of a child who still believed her guardian could never lie to her. Evangeline hated herself for it, but some truths were too heavy for 8-year-old shoulders. The diner door slammed open at 6:47 a.m. Evangeline didn't look up. She didn't need to. The sound told her everything. Someone making an entrance, demanding attention, announcing their presence to a room that hadn't asked for it. She kept her eyes on Iris's waffle. Her posture relaxed, her breathing, steady and controlled. Don't engage. Don't draw attention. Stay invisible. Well, well, well. The voice was young, confident, the kind of confidence that came from never being told no, from growing up with a last name that opened doors and closed questions. Evangeline still didn't look up. She heard boots approaching, 3 sets moving in formation. Officers, probably. The walk was too arrogant for enlisted personnel. Patterson, Vance, you seeing this? I see it, Captain. Civilian in our section, eating our food, at our table. Evangeline finally raised her eyes. 3 men stood over their booth, all late 20s, early 30s. 2 lieutenants flanking a captain whose uniform looked like it had been pressed that morning by someone who actually cared about the creases. His nameplate read Blackwell. Captain Garrett Blackwell. Evangeline recognized the name. She'd heard it whispered around the base. The general's son, the golden boy, the man who'd never seen real combat but wore his ribbons like he'd earned them in blood. Can I help you? Evangeline asked quietly. Yeah, you can help me by moving. This section is for officers. I don't see a sign. Blackwell's eyes narrowed. The confidence flickered. Men like him didn't expect resistance from women in janitor uniforms. The sign is me telling you. Iris had stopped eating. Her small hands were shaking slightly, syrup dripping from the fork she'd forgotten to set down. She always got nervous around loud voices. Too many memories of hospitals and military chaplains and adults crying when they thought she couldn't hear. Evangeline placed her hand over Iris's. Steady, warm. The universal language of, it's going to be okay, even when both of them knew it might not be. We're almost done, Evangeline said. 5 minutes. 5 minutes is 4 minutes too long. Blackwell pulled out a chair and sat down uninvited. His lieutenants took positions on either side, flanking the booth like sentries. Like this was a tactical operation instead of breakfast bullying. You know what I hate about civilians on base? Blackwell leaned forward, elbows on the table, invading space the way men did when they'd never been taught boundaries had consequences. I have a feeling you're going to tell me. They think they belong here. They think because they push a mop or type some reports, they're part of something. But they're not. They're just help. Evangeline said nothing. The silence stretched. Old interrogation technique. Let them fill the void. Let them talk themselves into corners they didn't see coming. What's your name, mop girl? Thorne. Evangeline Thorne. Thorne. Blackwell rolled the name around like he was tasting something sour. And who's this, your daughter? I'm her guardian. Guardian. That's a fancy word. She got real parents, or did they abandon her when they saw what they'd made? The air in Evangeline's lungs crystallized. She felt something shift inside her. Something that had been sleeping for 6 years. Something with teeth and claws and a body count that would make Captain Garrett Blackwell wake up screaming if he knew the truth. Don't. Not here. Not in front of Iris. Her mother passed away, Evangeline said, her voice flat, empty of everything except the words themselves. Killed in action. Syria. 6 years ago. It was the truth this time. No comfortable lies about cancer or car accidents. Abigail deserved better than euphemisms. Blackwell's expression didn't change. If anything, his smile widened. Predators sensed weakness, the way sharks smelled blood in water. That's tough. Real tough. So you're what, playing mommy now? Miss Evie, Iris whispered. Can we go? In a minute, sweetheart. Actually, Blackwell said, leaning back in his chair like he owned the building and everyone in it, I think you can go now. In fact, I insist. He picked up Iris's plate, the waffles she'd been eating, the syrup cup she'd arranged so carefully, and slowly, deliberately, he turned it upside down. The plate hit the table with a ceramic crack. Syrup spread across the surface in a golden flood, running over the edge and splashing onto Iris's uniform. The navy blue jumper Evangeline had ironed that morning. The white shirt that had been pristine 30 seconds ago. Iris gasped. Tears sprang to her eyes, instant and hot. Oops, Blackwell said. Clumsy me. Evangeline watched the syrup drip onto the floor, drop by drop, each one landing like a countdown, like the tick of a timer on an explosive device that was about to detonate and take everyone in the blast radius with it. She counted to 5 in her head. Old training, the same training that had kept her alive through 8 years of operations in 15 countries, where one mistake meant death. 5 seconds to assess, 5 seconds to decide, 5 seconds before the Phoenix stopped hiding and remembered what it was built to do. You're going to apologize to her. Evangeline said quietly. Blackwell laughed. Actually laughed. The lieutenants shifted uncomfortably. They'd noticed something their captain hadn't. The way Evangeline was sitting. The perfect stillness. The controlled breathing of someone measuring distances and calculating angles without even thinking about it. Excuse me. You have 5 seconds. Or what? Evangeline looked up. For the first time since sitting down, she let Blackwell see something real. Just a flicker. A half-second glimpse of something behind her eyes. Something cold and patient and very, very dangerous. The something that had looked through a scope 67 times and never missed. Blackwell's laugh caught in his throat. Or what, he repeated, but the bravado had cracked. 4 seconds. Listen, I don't know who you think. 3. Patterson Vance, can you believe this woman? The lieutenant said nothing. Lieutenant Patterson had gone pale. He'd seen something in Evangeline's eyes, something that spoke to the primal part of the brain that knew when it was standing in front of a predator. Captain, Patterson said slowly, maybe we should. 2 seconds. Okay, that's it. Blackwell stood abruptly, his chair scraping against linoleum. I don't know what kind of tough girl act you're trying to pull, but let me explain something. My father is General Harrison Blackwell. 2 stars. I could have you fired, evicted, and banned from this base with 1 phone call. 1. So why don't you take your little sob story about your dead friend and your charity case kid and... Evangeline moved. Not fast, not aggressive. She simply stood from the booth, her movements so fluid and controlled that Blackwell actually stepped back without realizing it. They were roughly the same height, but the similarity ended there. Blackwell had the soft look of someone who trained in air-conditioned gyms and ate at the officers' club. Evangeline had the worn hardness of someone who trained in places that didn't appear on maps and ate whatever wouldn't kill her. I warned you, Evangeline said quietly. 5 seconds. That was your window. You warning me, you're a janitor. You clean toilets for a living. You're nothing. Miss Evie. Iris's voice was small, frightened. Evangeline glanced at the girl. Wide eyes, wet cheeks, small body trembling in the booth. She'd already seen too much violence in her short life. The kind that left scars you couldn't see but carried forever. Not in front of her. Not now. Iris, go wait by the door. But, now sweetheart, it's okay. I'll be right there. Iris hesitated, then slid out of the booth and walked quickly toward the exit, clutching her backpack with both hands. The bag had belonged to Abigail once, another hand-me-down from a ghost. Evangeline watched her go, waited until the girl was out of immediate earshot. Then she turned back to Blackwell. Your father is General Harrison Blackwell, she said calmly. 3rd Infantry Division. Served in Iraq during the initial invasion. Distinguished Service Cross, Bronze Star, Legion of Merit. Blackwell blinked. How do you... He also sat behind a desk in Baghdad while his men were dying in Fallujah. Never fired his weapon in combat. Never saw a single enemy combatant face to face. His medals came from knowing the right people, not from being the right person. Blackwell's face went red. You don't know anything about my father. I know everything about your father. I know about the convoy ambush in 2005 that killed 12 men because he ignored intelligence warnings. I know about the investigation that was buried. I know about the families who never got answers. That's a lie. It's in the classified files. File number 7749 Alpha. I'd tell you to look it up, but you don't have the clearance. And you do, a janitor. Evangeline smiled. It wasn't a warm expression. It was the smile of someone who'd seen the worst humanity had to offer and learned to recognize it in men like Blackwell. Men who'd inherited power instead of earning it. Men who confused privilege with competence. I'm not a janitor, Captain. That's just what I do now. Then what are you? Exactly what you see. A guardian trying to have breakfast with a child. But you couldn't leave it alone. You had to push. You had to prove something to your friends. You had to spill syrup on an 8-year-old girl's uniform because it made you feel powerful. Blackwell's fists clenched. You're insane. Maybe, but I'm also the only person in this room who knows that your father didn't just ignore intelligence warnings. He sold information to local warlords. He got American assets killed for money. And someone very high up in the chain of command covered it up. The words landed like artillery shells. Blackwell took a step back. His lieutenants exchanged nervous glances. The diner had gone quiet. Everyone watching. Everyone pretending not to watch. How do you know that? Blackwell whispered. Because I was there. Because I saw the aftermath. Because I spent 3 weeks in the mountains of Kandahar tracking down everyone who knew what really happened. And because 67 people who thought they'd gotten away with treason learned otherwise. Blackwell's face had gone from red to white, pale as paper, pale as a man who just realized he'd picked a fight he couldn't win. You're lying. Am I? Then why are you sweating? Why is your hand shaking? Why do you look like you just saw a ghost? This isn't over, Blackwell said through gritted teeth. It is if you're smart. Nobody talks to me like this. Maybe that's your problem. Lieutenant Patterson touched Blackwell's arm. Captain, let's just go. This isn't worth it. Blackwell shrugged him off violently. Don't touch me. He was trembling now, with anger, with embarrassment, with something that might have been fear. The kind of fear that came from suddenly understanding you weren't the apex predator you thought you were. Who are you? He whispered. Evangeline leaned closer, close enough that only Blackwell could hear, close enough that her voice was barely a breath. I'm nobody, a ghost, and ghosts don't exist until they need to. She stepped back, straightened her work shirt, turned toward the door where Iris waited small and scared and clutching a backpack that had belonged to her mother. Enjoy your breakfast, Captain, and next time you want to prove how important you are, pick on someone your own size. She walked away without looking back. Behind her, the diner sat in stunned silence. Blackwell stood, frozen, his lieutenants watching him uncertainly, his face still pale as bone. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. And outside, Evangeline Thorne took Iris's hand and walked her toward school, wondering how long she could keep the phoenix buried before someone forced it back to life. Iris didn't speak until they were halfway to the school building. The morning sun was warm on their faces, the sounds of the base carrying on around them, like the world hadn't just tilted on its axis. Miss Evie, yes, that man was scared of you. At the end, I saw his face. Evangeline squeezed the small hand in hers. Some people get scared when they realize they're wrong. But you didn't do anything. You just talked to him. Sometimes words are enough. Mom used to say that. She said you were scary good at talking, that you could make people tell you things without them even knowing they were doing it. Evangeline smiled despite herself. Abigail had always seen too much, known too much. It was what had made her such a good spotter, such a good friend, such a terrible person to keep secrets from. Your mom said a lot of things. She also said most people never see the real you, that you keep it hidden. Evangeline's step faltered, just for a moment. What else did she say? Iris looked up at her with those green eyes, too wise for 8 years old, too perceptive for Evangeline's comfort. She said the real you was wonderful and dangerous and sad. Is that true? Evangeline stopped walking. She knelt down until she was at Iris's level, the morning sun warm on their faces, the sounds of the bass carrying on around them, like they existed in their own small world. I'm going to tell you something, she said carefully, and I need you to remember it. Okay. Before you were born, I had a different job, a hard job. I helped people who were in trouble, people who didn't have anyone else to help them. Like a superhero. No, not a superhero. Superheroes don't make the choices I made. They don't carry the things I carry. What things? Evangeline touched the girl's cheek gently. The knowledge that I wasn't always good, that I did what I had to do to protect people, even when it meant doing bad things, even when it meant becoming someone I didn't want to be. But you're good now. I try to be. Every day I try. Then why does it matter what you did before? The question hit Evangeline harder than she expected. Out of the mouths of children came truths that adults spent lifetimes avoiding. Because the person I was, she's still inside me, waiting. And sometimes people poke her, like that captain did. They poke and push and think they can get away with it because they don't know what they're poking. What happens if they poke too hard? Then she wakes up, and she does things I promised your mother I wouldn't do anymore. Iris was quiet for a long moment, processing, filing away information in whatever place children stored the uncomfortable truths adults tried to shield them from. The captain poked really hard today, she said finally. He did. But you didn't wake up. Not all the way. No, not all the way. Because of me. Evangeline pulled her into a hug, held her tight. The 8-year-old wisdom cutting through decades of guilt and regret like a laser through smoke. Because of you. Because your mom asked me to be better. Because being your guardian is more important than anything I ever did before. Iris hugged her back fiercely. I don't care who you were, she whispered. You're my Miss Evie. That's all that matters. Evangeline held her for a long moment. Then she took the small hand again and walked the rest of the way to school. She dropped Iris at the main entrance with a kiss on the forehead and a promise to pick her up at 3:15. Exactly 3:15. Never late, never early. Consistency was safety in an 8-year-old's world. Then she walked back to the base. Back to the mop and bucket waiting where she'd left them. Back to the floors that still needed cleaning. Back to the invisible life she'd built from the ashes of who she used to be. But somewhere across Fort Carson, Captain Garrett Blackwell was making a phone call to his father. A phone call that would set in motion events neither of them could control. A phone call that would wake something that had been sleeping for 6 years. The phoenix had been poked, and phoenixes once disturbed don't always go back to sleep quietly. They burn. The phone call came through at 7:23 a.m. General Harrison Blackwell was in the middle of his morning briefing when his personal cell buzzed. The private number that only 4 people in the world had access to. He excused himself from the conference room, stepped into the hallway and answered on the second ring. Garrett, this better be important. Dad, we have a problem. The general sighed. Garrett always had problems. Usually they involved mistakes that needed covering, embarrassments that needed burying, or consequences that needed avoiding. What is it this time? There's a woman on base, a janitor. She knows things she shouldn't know. Garrett, I don't have time for. She mentioned file 7749 Alpha. The general went silent. The kind of silence that comes when the ground beneath your feet suddenly isn't as solid as you thought. When the past you'd buried starts clawing its way back to the surface. Dad, you there? Where did you hear that number? She said it this morning, in the cafeteria. She knew about the convoy. She knew about the investigation. She knew about the cover-up. Harrison Blackwell felt something cold settle in his stomach. That file number hadn't been spoken aloud in 19 years. The investigation had been buried so deep that even most Pentagon brass didn't know it existed. It was a ghost, a classified phantom that 36 people had died to keep secret. Who is this woman? Her name is Thorne, Evangeline Thorne. She works maintenance on base, has a kid with her, some kind of guardian situation. Describe her. Mid-30s, auburn hair, has a scar on her collarbone, and I saw the edge of a tattoo on her wrist when her sleeve rode up. Looked like a bird. A phoenix, maybe. The cold in Harrison's stomach turned to ice, crept up his spine, wrapped around his lungs until breathing became a conscious effort. Phoenix. No, it couldn't be. Dad, you still there? Who is she? Don't talk to her again. Don't go near her. Don't even look at her. Do you understand me? What? Why? Who is she? Just do what I tell you, Garrett. But she embarrassed me in front of everyone. She threatened me. She knew things about you that... Did she touch you? No. Did she raise her voice? Make any physical moves? No. She just talked. But the way she talked, Dad, it was like she was deciding whether to kill me or not. Harrison closed his eyes. He'd heard stories. Years ago when he'd been stationed at JSOC headquarters. Whispers about a unit that didn't officially exist. Phantom Cell. The operators who handled missions so black that even the Joint Chiefs didn't get full briefings. The men and women who went into places that weren't supposed to have American footprints and came back without leaving any evidence they'd been there at all. And he'd heard about one operator in particular. A female sniper they called Phoenix 9. The one who'd been sent to clean up the worst messes. The one who'd handled more unsanctioned eliminations than any other operator in special operations history. The one who disappeared 6 years ago after a mission in Syria went sideways. The description Garrett had just given matched the rumors exactly. Right down to the Phoenix tattoo that marked Phantom Cell operators like brands on livestock. Dad, talk to me. Who is this woman? Someone I hoped we'd never meet. What does that mean? It means I need to find out if she's really who I think she is. And if she is, God help us all. Harrison Blackwell ended the call. Stood in the hallway for a long moment. Then he made another call. This one to a number that didn't exist in any official directory. A number that connected to people who solved problems that couldn't be solved through official channels. The kind of problems that disappeared in the middle of the night and were never spoken of again. Evangeline spent the morning doing what she always did. She mopped floors, she emptied trash cans. She nodded politely to soldiers who walked past without seeing her. She fixed a clogged sink in the women's restroom and replaced 3 light bulbs in the administrative wing. Normal work, invisible work, but her mind was elsewhere. She shouldn't have said those things to Captain Blackwell, shouldn't have revealed that she knew classified information, shouldn't have let the Phoenix out even for a moment. 6 years of careful anonymity, and she'd blown it over spilled syrup and an 8-year-old's tears. Abigail would have laughed at her. She'd always said Evangeline's temper was her biggest weakness. Not the explosive kind that got operators killed in the field, but the cold kind, the controlled kind, the kind that made her say exactly the right words to destroy someone's confidence and then watch them crumble. You don't shoot people with words, Evie. You vivisect them. It's worse. She'd been right. It was worse. Because now Captain Blackwell was going to tell his father, and General Blackwell was going to start digging, and eventually someone was going to connect the dots between a maintenance worker named Evangeline Thorne and a ghost named Phoenix 9. She'd been careful. New name, new social security number, new life history carefully constructed by people who owed her favors. People who understood that sometimes operators needed to disappear for reasons that had nothing to do with mission failure and everything to do with survival. But no cover was perfect. Someone always found a thread eventually. And Garrett Blackwell had just started pulling. The knock on the maintenance closet door came at 11:47 a.m. Evangeline was organizing cleaning supplies when she heard it. 3 sharp raps, military precision. "Come in." The door opened and a woman stepped through, late 50s, silver oak leaves on her collar. Posture so straight it looked painful. Her nameplate read, Hayes, Colonel Jennifer Hayes, base commander. Evangeline set down the bottle of floor cleaner and straightened up. "Ma'am, something I can help you with." Hayes studied her for a long moment. Her eyes moved across Evangeline's face, her hands her stance. The quick assessment of someone who'd spent decades evaluating people and separating the dangerous from the harmless. "Close the door," she said quietly. Evangeline complied. "You had an encounter with Captain Blackwell this morning." "I did. He claims you threatened him. Said you knew classified information that you shouldn't have access to." "Is that what he claims?" "That's what he told his father, who called my office 20 minutes ago demanding to know who you are and how you got clearance to work on this base." Evangeline said nothing. Old interrogation training. Silence was a weapon. Let them fill the void. Let them reveal what they knew and what they were fishing for. Hayes took a step closer. "I ran your background check myself when you applied 6 years ago. Evangeline Thorne, honorable discharge from the Army in 2018, administrative specialist, 4 years of service, no combat deployments, clean record." "That's correct." "Except it's not correct, is it?" Evangeline met her eyes. "Ma'am, I don't know what you mean." "I've seen operators before, Miss Thorne. The way you carry yourself, the way you position yourself in that cafeteria this morning. Back to the wall, clear sight line to the exit. The way you handled Blackwell without ever raising your voice or making a threatening move. That's not administrative specialist training. That's something else entirely. I was just trying to have breakfast with my ward. And I'm just trying to understand why a maintenance worker has General Blackwell calling my office at the crack of dawn using language I haven't heard since my deployment to Iraq. What kind of language? The kind that suggests he knows exactly who you are, and he's terrified." Evangeline let out a slow breath. The cover was blown, or at least cracking. The question now was how much Hayes actually knew versus how much she suspected. "Colonel, I don't want any trouble. I just want to do my job and take care of Iris." "Then you shouldn't have mentioned that file number." Evangeline's eyes sharpened. "You know about 7749 Alpha. I know it exists. I don't know what's in it. But I know that General Blackwell has spent 19 years making sure nobody ever opens it. And I know that someone who mentions it casually over breakfast is either incredibly stupid or incredibly dangerous. Maybe I'm both." Hayes almost smiled. "No, you're not stupid, which means you're the other thing." She moved toward the door, stopped with her hand on the knob. "In about 2 hours, there's going to be a team of investigators arriving on this base. They're going to want to talk to you, ask questions, dig into your background." "Investigators from where?" "Officially Army CID. Unofficially, I have no idea, but Blackwell pulled strings I didn't know he had. Evangeline nodded slowly, processing, calculating, running through options the way she'd been trained. Evade, confront, disappear. Each choice had consequences. Each path led somewhere she didn't want to go. And you're warning me because... Hayes was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer, more personal. Because I served with Colonel Patterson in Afghanistan. He used to tell stories about a unit that didn't exist, about operators who did impossible things, about one in particular who saved his life during an ambush in Kandahar, a female sniper who moved like nothing he'd ever seen, who dropped enemy combatants before they even knew she was there. I don't know anyone named Patterson. He described the operator who saved him, said she had a scar on her collarbone, said the enemy was dead before they understood what was happening, said she carried him 3 miles to an extraction point with a dislocated shoulder and never complained once. Evangeline said nothing. Patterson died 2 years ago. Cancer. Before he passed, he made me promise something. He made me promise that if I ever met one of those operators, one of those ghosts from the stories, I'd do right by them. Because they'd done right by people like us when nobody else could. Hayes opened the door. You have 2 hours, Miss Thorne. Whatever you need to do, I suggest you do it quickly. Then she was gone. Evangeline stood alone in the maintenance closet for a long moment. 2 hours. CID investigators. General Blackwell pulling strings. The Phoenix was waking up, whether she wanted it to or not. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number she hadn't called in 6 years. It rang twice before a voice answered. This number has been disconnected. Omega 7 Echo, Evangeline said quietly. A pause, then a click, then a familiar voice. Jesus Christ. Phoenix 9, I thought you were dead. I was, but someone's trying to make it permanent. Who? General Harrison Blackwell. 2-star, currently assigned to... I know who Blackwell is. Half the intelligence community knows who Blackwell is. The question is why he's coming after you. His son poked the wrong Phoenix. A long whistle came through the phone. You always did have a way with words. What do you need? Information. Everything you have on Blackwell's current activities. His connections. His vulnerabilities. That's a tall order. Blackwell's got friends in high places. So do I. Had. Past tense. You've been out of the game for 6 years. People forget. Favors expire. Some games you never really leave Whitmore. Another pause. Longer this time. Colonel Nathaniel Whitmore, the voice said. I'm impressed you remember my real name. Most people only knew me as Control. You were more than Control. You were the best commanding officer I ever had. And you were the best operator I ever trained. 67 confirmed kills, 8 years of operations, 0 mission failures. You set records that still haven't been broken. Records don't matter when you're mopping floors. Is that really what you've been doing, hiding as a janitor? Hiding as a guardian? There's a difference, Whitmore's voice softened. Abigail Crane's daughter. I heard you took custody after Syria. That was good of you, Phoenix. Not many operators would do that. Abigail was more than my spotter. She was my friend, and she died because someone betrayed our mission. Someone sold our position to local militia for money. You think it was Blackwell? I know it was Blackwell. I've spent 6 years proving it, collecting evidence, building a case, waiting for the right moment. And his son just gave you that moment. His son just forced my hand. Now I need to know everything. Blackwell's current operations, his financial dealings, his network, everything he's done since Syria. Whitmore was quiet for a moment. Evangeline could hear him thinking, weighing options, calculating risks. I can get you what you need, he said finally. But it's going to take time. 12 hours minimum. I have 2. Then I suggest you find a way to buy more. The line went dead. Evangeline checked her watch. 12:15 p.m. She needed to pick Iris up from school at 3:15. That gave her 3 hours to figure out a way to delay whatever Blackwell was planning. 3 hours to turn defense into offense. 3 hours to stop running and start hunting. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. They're already here. 2 SUVs just pulled through the main gate. Black government plates. You've got 45 minutes, maybe less. Evangeline deleted the message, started walking. Not toward the maintenance building, toward the vehicle she kept parked in the civilian lot. The one with the go bag in the trunk, the one she'd maintained for 6 years, hoping she'd never need it. She found Captain Garrett Blackwell in the officers' mess, eating lunch with his lieutenants, Patterson and Vance. The three men looked up as Evangeline approached. Blackwell's face went pale, then flushed with anger. "What the hell are you doing here? I told security to keep you. We need to talk. I have nothing to say to you." "Then listen." Evangeline pulled out a chair and sat down uninvited. Patterson and Vance tensed but made no move to stop her. They'd seen what happened in the cafeteria that morning. They weren't eager for a repeat performance. "Your father made a mistake," Evangeline said quietly. "My father doesn't make mistakes. He made one 19 years ago, and he's been compounding it ever since. Now he thinks bringing investigators will solve his problem. It won't. You don't know anything about my father? I know he's scared. I could hear it in your voice this morning when you talked about him." That wasn't confidence. That was a son repeating what he'd been told to say. Blackwell's jaw tightened. "Get out." "File 7749 Alpha, Evangeline said. The words landed like artillery shells. "You remember that number?" "I don't know what you're talking about." "You should. It's the file that could end your father's career. End your career. And everything the Blackwell family has built over the past 20 years. There is no file. There's always a file, Captain. Someone always writes things down. Names, dates, amounts, the kind of details that make prosecutors very happy and defense attorneys very rich." Blackwell leaned forward, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "If you're threatening my father, I'm offering him a deal." "What kind of deal?" "Call off the investigation. Tell the CID team it was a misunderstanding. Let me go back to mopping floors and raising Iris. Let me disappear the way I've been trying to disappear for 6 years." Why would he do that? Because the alternative is worse. Blackwell stared at her. His face was a battlefield of emotions. Anger, confusion, something that might have been fear. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Evangeline reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. She slid it across the table. Blackwell unfolded it slowly. His face went white as he read, This can't be real. It's very real. And there's more, much more. That's just the summary, the highlights, enough to show I'm serious." "Where did you get this?" "Does it matter?" "It matters because this information was supposed to be destroyed 19 years ago. Every copy, every record, every witness. Supposed to be. Wasn't." Blackwell looked up. His eyes were wide. The confident officer from that morning was gone, replaced by someone who was beginning to understand just how deep the water he was drowning in actually was. "Who the hell are you?" Evangeline leaned back in her chair. Let the question hang in the air. Let him see the answer in her eyes before she said the words. "I'm the woman who cleaned up your father's messes for 10 years. The woman he sent into places that didn't exist to do things that never happened. The woman who knows where all the bodies are buried because I put most of them there." "That's not possible." "Call your father. Ask him about Operation Nightfall. Ask him about the village in Helmand Province. Ask him what really happened to the intelligence assets who were going to testify about the convoy ambush." Blackwell's hand was shaking as he reached for his phone. "I wouldn't do that here," Evangeline said. "Too many ears, too many witnesses, too many ways for this conversation to end badly for everyone involved." "Then where?" "Somewhere private. You have 15 minutes to make a decision, Captain. Call your father and tell him to back off, or don't, and watch everything he's built come crashing down. Either way, I'll be at the maintenance building. You know where to find me." Evangeline stood, walked away, left Blackwell staring at the paper in his hands like it was a death warrant. Because it was. The 15 minutes felt like 15 hours. Evangeline waited in the maintenance building, organizing the supplies she'd already organized, listening for footsteps in the hallway that would tell her whether Blackwell had made the smart choice or the stupid one. Her phone buzzed once, a message from Iris's school confirming she'd eaten lunch. Turkey sandwich and carrot sticks. Normal routine. The life Evangeline was trying to protect. At the 14-minute mark, she heard them coming. Not Blackwell alone, multiple footsteps, heavy, moving with purpose. The kind of movement that came from people who were used to entering rooms and taking control of them. The door opened, and 4 men entered. 3 in civilian clothes, dark suits, government issue. Behind them stood someone Evangeline hadn't seen in 6 years. General Harrison Blackwell himself. 60 years old, more lines around the eyes than his photographs showed, more gray in his hair. but the same cold expression she remembered from classified briefing documents. The same eyes that had authorized operations that killed dozens of people and then slept soundly afterward. Evangeline Thorne, he said. His voice was exactly what she'd expected. Controlled, authoritative. The voice of someone who'd spent decades giving orders and having them followed without question. Or should I call you Phoenix 9? Evangeline stayed still, kept her hands visible, kept her posture relaxed but ready. The three men in suits had positioned themselves strategically, blocking the door, creating a perimeter. They were professionals, not the kind who made mistakes. I prefer Evangeline these days. I'm sure you do. The general stepped forward, the three men flanking him like Secret Service. I got the message, the summary. Very impressive. Impressive enough to call off your dogs? Impressive enough to come here myself. That wasn't the answer Evangeline had hoped for. General, I meant what I said. All I want is to be left alone. Walk away and this ends. The file stays buried. You keep your career. I keep mopping floors. Everyone goes home happy. See, that's the problem. Blackwell pulled out a chair and sat down heavily. I can't walk away. I've spent 19 years building something, a legacy, a future for my son, and I can't let some burned-out ghost threaten all of that because my boy was stupid enough to pick a fight in a cafeteria. Then control your boy. I intend to, but first I need to control you. Good luck with that. Blackwell smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. It was the smile of someone who'd played this game before and always won. You think you're still dangerous, don't you? Still the legendary operator who could walk through walls and kill without leaving a trace. But you've been out of the game for 6 years. You're soft, slow, you're a janitor now. And yet you brought 3 men with you. Insurance, not fear. Then why is your hand shaking? Blackwell looked down at his right hand. It was trembling slightly against the table. He pulled it back quickly, hid it from view like a tell in poker. Listen carefully, he said, his voice harder now. I know about the file. I know you have evidence that could hurt me. But I also know something about you. Something you've tried very hard to hide. Evangeline said nothing. Waited. Let him think he was in control. Let him walk into the trap he didn't see coming. Iris's school records list you as her only guardian. No other family, no emergency contacts besides you. If something were to happen to you, if you were suddenly unable to care for her, she'd go into the system. Foster care. Maybe eventually adopted. Maybe not. It's hard for older children, I understand. The air in the room changed, went cold. The 3 men in suits shifted uncomfortably. Even they understood that Blackwell had just crossed a line that shouldn't be crossed. Choose your next words very carefully, Evangeline said quietly, or what you'll attack me here in front of witnesses. General Blackwell, the voice came from the doorway. Colonel Nathaniel Whitmore stepped into the room. 64 years old, but moving like someone 20 years younger. He was in civilian clothes, jeans, and a leather jacket that had seen better days. But his bearing was pure military, pure command presence. Colonel Whitmore, Blackwell said, surprised. What are you doing here? Stopping you from making the biggest mistake of your career. This doesn't concern you. It absolutely concerns me. Phoenix 9 was my operator, my responsibility, and you just threatened a child to get to her. I didn't threaten anyone. I simply stated facts. You stated an intention, and intentions matter. Whitmore moved to stand beside Evangeline, a show of solidarity, a line drawn in the sand. General, I'm going to give you some advice. The kind I gave you 19 years ago when you came to me asking how to bury the convoy investigation. Walk away right now while you still can. You helped me then. You'll help me now. I helped you then because I believed you when you said it was an accident. A mistake. I didn't know about the weapons trafficking, the payoffs, the fact that you'd sold out American soldiers for money. You can't prove any of that. I don't need to prove it. Phoenix 9 already has. And unlike 19 years ago, I'm not going to help you bury the truth. I'm going to help her expose it. Blackwell stood abruptly. His face was purple with rage. You're both making a mistake. I have connections, people who owe me favors, people who will make you disappear. Those people are abandoning you as we speak, Whitmore said. I've been on the phone for the past 3 hours, talking to everyone who matters, and they've all reached the same conclusion. You're toxic, you're a liability, and they're distancing themselves as fast as they can. That's a lie. Is it check your phone? See how many of your calls are being returned. Blackwell pulled out his phone, scrolled through. His face went from purple to white, message after message, call after call. None returned. The silence of people cutting ties, the sound of a sinking ship losing its rats. This isn't over, he said finally. Yes, it is, Evangeline said. You just don't know it yet. She stood, moved toward the door. Whitmore followed. You have until midnight, General. After that, everything goes public. The file, the evidence, all of it. And you can spend the rest of your life explaining to military prosecutors why 12 soldiers had to die so you could get rich. They left Blackwell standing in the maintenance building, left him surrounded by his 3 bodyguards, who suddenly looked less like protection and more like witnesses to a career ending in real time. Outside, the sun was bright. The air was clear. It was 2:45 p.m. Evangeline had 30 minutes to pick up Iris from school. Thank you, she said to Whitmore. Don't thank me yet. Blackwell's not going to roll over quietly. Men like him never do. I know. That's why we need to leave. Tonight, before he makes his next move. Where will you go? Somewhere he can't find us. Somewhere far enough away that his reach doesn't extend. There's nowhere that far, Phoenix. Not for a 2-star general with the connections he has. Then I'll make somewhere. I've done it before. Whitmore pulled an envelope from his jacket, handed it to her. Safe house address in Raleigh. Still active. People there who will help you. Director Victoria Ashford, CIA. She owes you for Kandahar. She'll provide protection while we build the case against Blackwell. You didn't think I was going to let you do this alone, did you? I trained you. I watched you become the best operator Phantom Cell ever had. And I'll be damned if I'm going to let some corrupt general destroy you for doing the right thing. Evangeline felt something catch in her throat. Emotions she'd kept buried for 6 years. The weight of isolation lifting. The realization that she wasn't alone anymore. Abigail would have liked you, she said quietly. Abigail Crane was one of the finest soldiers I ever knew, and her death was a war crime. We're going to make sure Blackwell answers for it. They stood in the parking lot for a moment, 2 ghosts from an operation that never officially existed. 2 people who'd spent decades in the shadows learning how to survive when survival meant disappearing. Get Iris, Whitmore said. Pack light. Meet me at the safe house by midnight. I'll handle Blackwell's investigators. Buy you enough time to get clear. And if he makes a move before then he'll discover that threatening Phoenix 9 was the last mistake he ever made. Evangeline drove to Iris's school with the windows down and the radio off. She needed to think, to plan, to prepare for what came next. The life she'd built for 6 years was ending. The invisibility was gone. The Phoenix was awake. The question now was whether she could protect Iris while fighting a war she'd tried to avoid. Whether she could be both guardian and hunter. Whether she could keep the promise she'd made to Abigail without becoming the person she'd left behind. She pulled into the school parking lot at 3:14 p.m., 1 minute early. Always 1 minute early. Consistency was safety. She was halfway to the main entrance when she saw the van. Black, windowless, parked across the street from the school. Engine running. 2 men in civilian clothes standing near the playground fence, pretending to check their phones. A third sitting behind the wheel. Face hidden behind tinted glass. Professionals, not military. The posture was wrong for that. Private contractors. The kind of men who did dirty work for people who didn't want to get their hands dirty. Evangeline's training kicked in automatically. Assess, identify, neutralize. 3 threats, unknown capabilities, unknown armament. Primary objective Iris. Secondary objective extraction without witnesses. Time to final bell, 1 minute. She pulled out her phone, dialed Iris's teacher. Mrs. Patterson, this is Evangeline Thorne, Iris's guardian. Oh, Miss Thorne, we were just about to. I need you to keep Iris inside for a few minutes. Don't let her leave the classroom. Is everything all right? There's been a situation. I'm on my way, but I need to make sure she stays safe until I get there. A pause. Of course. I'll keep her with me. And Mrs. Patterson, if anyone asks for her, anyone at all, don't let them near her, even if they say they're with me. Miss Thorne, you're scaring me. Good. That means you'll be careful. Evangeline hung up, started walking toward the van, steady, unhurried, like she belonged there, like she was just another parent picking up their child. The 2 men near the fence noticed her. One spoke into a radio. The other started moving toward her with the casual stride of someone trying not to look threatening. "Miss Thorne." The man smiled as he approached. Professional smile. Meaningless. "I'm with base security. General Blackwell asked us to provide an escort for you and your ward." "Is that right?" "Yes, ma'am. He's concerned about your safety after this morning's incident." "How thoughtful of him. If you'll just come with us." "I don't think so." The smile faltered. "Ma'am, I really think you should." "I said no." Evangeline stopped walking. Let him see the decision in her eyes, the calculation that had already been made. "And you can tell Blackwell that if he wants to threaten Iris, he should come do it himself instead of sending hired help." The man's expression hardened. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you do. You're here to grab her when she comes out of school. Use her as leverage to make me cooperate. Or maybe just make us both disappear. Which is it?" "Ma'am, I really think you should. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to get back in your van, you're going to drive away, and you're going to tell whoever hired you that Evangeline Thorne said no. And if we don't, then we're going to have a problem." The second man had arrived now, flanking her left. The driver remained in the van, ready to move at a moment's notice. "Two against one," the first man said. "I like those odds." "You shouldn't. Big talk from a janitor." "I'm not a janitor. That's just what I do." Evangeline shifted her weight, centered her balance, went through the mental checklist she'd run 1,000 times before. Distance to targets, cover positions, escape routes, innocent bystanders. "What I am," she continued quietly, "is someone who spent 8 years learning how to neutralize threats in ways you can't imagine. And right now you're standing between me and a child I swore to protect. So I'm going to give you 5 seconds to make a choice. Same 5 seconds I gave Captain Blackwell this morning. And just like this morning, I'm hoping you'll make the smart choice." The two men exchanged glances. 5. "This is ridiculous." 4. "We have our orders." 3. "You can't take both of us." 2. "This is your last warning." 1. The first man moved. His hand went toward his jacket, toward the weapon Evangeline had spotted the moment she'd seen them. Standard contractor kit, Glock 19 probably, concealed carry holster, 3.5-pound trigger pull. He never got there. Evangeline caught his wrist before his fingers touched the gun, twisted, applied pressure to the exact point where radius met carpals. The snap was audible even over traffic noise. The man screamed, went down, his weapon clattered to the sidewalk. The second man was faster, had his gun out and aimed before Evangeline finished the first takedown. But Evangeline was already moving. She stepped inside his guard, one hand catching his gun arm, the other striking the nerve cluster in his neck. The brachial plexus stun dropped him like a sack of concrete. 3 seconds, 2 down. The van's engine roared to life. The driver had seen enough. He was cutting his losses, running. Evangeline picked up the dropped Glock, aimed, fired once. The front tire exploded. The van swerved, jumped the curb, slammed into a fire hydrant. Water erupted into the air in a geyser. The driver stumbled out, dazed, bleeding from a cut on his forehead where he'd hit the steering wheel. "Stay down," Evangeline said. Her voice was calm, empty, the voice of Phoenix 9. The voice she'd used on 67 people who'd made the mistake of being on the wrong side of her scope. The driver stayed down. From somewhere behind her, Evangeline heard children's voices. The final bell had rung. School was letting out. She tucked the weapon into her waistband, covered it with her jacket, started walking toward the entrance. Behind her, the two men groaned on the sidewalk, too injured to follow. The van hissed and steamed against the hydrant, drawing attention. People were already pulling out phones, calling for help, calling police. She had maybe 5 minutes before authorities arrived. Plenty of time. Mrs. Patterson was waiting in the classroom with Iris when Evangeline walked in. The girl's eyes went wide. "Miss Evie, Mrs. Patterson said there was an emergency. Are you okay?" "I'm fine, sweetheart." Evangeline hugged her tight, breathed in the scent of her hair, felt her small heart beating against her chest. Safe. Still safe for now. "We just need to leave a little early today." "Is something wrong?" "Nothing I can't handle." Mrs. Patterson watched them with worried eyes. "Miss Thorne, I heard something outside. It sounded like a car accident. Someone hit a hydrant. The police will be here soon. You should keep the other children inside until things settle down." "What about you?" "We'll be fine." Evangeline took Iris's hand. "Thank you for keeping her safe." Of course. But Miss Thorne, yes. Whatever's happening, please be careful. Evangeline nodded. Always. They left through the side entrance, avoiding the growing crowd near the crashed van, avoiding the questions and the witnesses and the complications that came with being seen. Iris clutched her backpack with both hands, the one that had belonged to Abigail, the last piece of her mother she had left. Where are we going? Iris asked quietly. Somewhere safe? Is it because of the man from this morning, the angry captain? Yes. He has friends who want to hurt us. Why? Because I know something they don't want anyone else to know. Iris was quiet for a moment, processing. Then in that 8-year-old way of cutting through complexity to reach simple truth, she asked, what do you know? That they did bad things, and they're scared I'll tell people. Are you going to tell people? Maybe, if it's the only way to keep us safe. They walked 2 more blocks, Evangeline checking mirrors, watching for tails, running through tactical scenarios. How long until the contractors reported back? How long until Blackwell knew his grab had failed? How long until he escalated? Her phone buzzed. Text from Whitmore. Heard about the school. Clean exit. Meet me at coordinates below. Leaving for Raleigh in 1 hour. Don't be late. Evangeline memorized the GPS location, deleted the message. Then her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered cautiously. Phoenix 9. Blackwell's voice, controlled but strained. Before you run, you should know something. I'm listening. Your father's final investigation, the one that got him killed. I have the complete files, everything he found, everything he was going to expose. Names you don't know, crimes you haven't uncovered. Evangeline's grip tightened on the phone. Why would you tell me this? Because I'm offering a trade, the files for your silence. You get the truth about Augustus Thorne's death. I get my life back. Everyone wins. Except the 12 soldiers, except Abigail, except everyone you've killed. Think about Iris, Blackwell said quietly. Think about what she needs. A guardian in witness protection, or a guardian who has closure, who knows exactly who killed her mother and why. The line went dead. Evangeline stared at the phone. The offer was poison, but poison wrapped in the one thing she'd wanted for 6 years. The truth. She looked down at Iris. The girl was watching her with those green eyes. Abigail's eyes. Miss Evie, you okay? Evangeline deleted the call log and took Iris's hand. I'm fine, sweetheart. Let's go. Some truths weren't worth the price. They had 1 hour to grab essentials from the apartment and disappear. 1 hour before General Harrison Blackwell realized that threatening Phoenix Nine's family was the last mistake he'd ever make. The Phoenix was awake now, and she was done hiding. The safe house in Raleigh sat at the end of a quiet street where oak trees older than the Cold War cast shadows that moved like living things in the evening breeze. 11:47 p.m., 13 minutes before Whitmore's deadline. 13 minutes before everything Evangeline had been building toward for 6 years either came together or fell apart. She parked the sedan 3 blocks away. Old habits. Never park where they expect you. Never make the approach obvious. Always leave yourself an exit that doesn't involve going back the way you came. Iris was asleep in the back seat, exhausted by fear and confusion, and the kind of day that aged children faster than years ever could. Evangeline watched her sleep for a moment, the rise and fall of small shoulders, the way her hands still clutched that stuffed rabbit even in dreams. Iris, wake up, sweetheart. The girl's eyes opened slowly, confused, disoriented. Are we there? Almost. I need you to stay close to me. Don't make any noise. If I tell you to run, you run. Don't look back. Don't stop. Just run. Where? Anywhere away from me. Find a police officer. Tell them your name. They'll help you. What about you? Don't worry about me. Just get yourself safe. Iris took her hand. The grip was surprisingly strong for an 8-year-old. I'm not leaving you, Miss Evie. Whatever happens, we stay together. Evangeline looked at this small, brave, impossible girl who deserved better than any of this. Together, Evangeline agreed, no matter what. The front door opened before they reached the porch. A woman stood in the doorway. 47, though the gray streak through dark hair and the lines around her eyes suggested she'd earned every year the hard way. Director Victoria Ashford, CIA, the woman whose life Evangeline had saved in Kandahar 7 years ago. Phoenix 9, Ashford said. Welcome to Raleigh. Director Ashford, Call me Victoria. We're past formalities at this point. She stepped aside. And you must be Iris. Iris looked up at her, measuring, judging. Are you going to help Miss Evie? Ashford smiled. It was a tired smile, but genuine. I'm going to try, sweetheart. I'm going to try very hard. She led them through a narrow hallway into a back room where three people sat around a table covered with laptops, phones, and documents. They looked up as Evangeline entered. Professional assessment, measuring capability. This is the team, Ashford said. Agent Torres handles communications. Agent Webb is our tactical specialist. Agent Reeves runs tech and signals intelligence. Evangeline nodded at each of them, but didn't speak. Her attention was focused on Iris, who had tightened her grip on Evangeline's hand the moment they'd entered the room. Is there somewhere Iris can rest? Evangeline asked. Upstairs, second door on the left. There's a bed and a bathroom. Someone will be stationed outside the door at all times. I'll stay with her. Evangeline, we need to debrief. Every hour we delay gives Blackwell more time to... My ward comes first, always. The room went quiet. The three agents exchanged glances but said nothing. Ashford studied Evangeline for a long moment, then nodded. Fine, take her upstairs. Get her settled. But then, we talk. We have less than 12 hours before Blackwell makes his next move, and we need to be ready. Evangeline didn't argue. She led Iris up the stairs, checking corners out of habit. The second door on the left opened into a small bedroom with a single bed and a window overlooking the street below. Is this where we're staying? Iris asked. For now. It's not very pretty. No, but it's safe. Iris sat on the bed and pulled her backpack into her lap. She'd been clutching it since they'd left Fort Carson. Evangeline sat beside her. Iris, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Okay? The people downstairs are going to help us stop the bad man. General Blackwell, the captain's father. But to do that, I'm going to have to tell them things. Things about who I used to be. Things you might hear that will scare you. About the 67 people, Evangeline's breath caught. How do you know about that? Mom's letters, the ones she left for me. She wrote about you, about Phoenix 9, about how you were the best at what you did, about how many bad people you stopped. What else did the letters say? That you saved her life more times than she could count, that you carried her when she was wounded, that you never left anyone behind, that you were scary and wonderful and sad all at the same time. Evangeline felt tears building behind her eyes. Abigail had known, had understood, had written it all down for her daughter to find when she was old enough to process the truth. Your mother was very smart. She said you'd try to protect me from knowing, but she wanted me to understand. She said understanding was better than ignorance even when it hurt. Do you understand? Iris looked at her with those green eyes, too wise for 8 years old. I understand you did hard things to keep people safe. I understand the bad man wants to hurt you because you know his secrets. I understand we're running because staying would be worse. And are you scared? Yes, but not of you. Never of you. Evangeline pulled her into a hug, held her until the tears stopped threatening to fall. Then she stood. Try to sleep. I'll be right downstairs. If you need me, just call. I'll hear you. Miss Evie. Yes. When you go downstairs, you're coming back right. Not like Mom. Evangeline's throat tightened. Abigail's last request echoed across 6 years, the promise that had defined every choice since. I will always come back to you. That's not a promise I make lightly. It's the only promise that matters. Iris nodded, holding the stuffed rabbit tighter. Okay, I believe you. When Evangeline returned to the back room, the team had rearranged. Whitmore had arrived, 64 years old but moving like someone 20 years younger. He stood when she entered, old military courtesy. Phoenix, glad you made it. Colonel, thank you for this. Don't thank me yet. We have a situation developing faster than we anticipated. Ashford gestured to a laptop screen showing news coverage. Military base, Fort Carson. Flashing lights. The crashed van from that afternoon. 3 contractors hospitalized. One with a broken wrist, one with nerve damage, one with a concussion. All 3 are refusing to talk to police. But someone leaked surveillance footage to the media. You're all over the news, Evangeline. They're calling you a domestic terrorist. Of course they are. That's Blackwell's play. Discredit me before I can expose him. It's working. APB out on your vehicle. Bolo alert for you and Iris. Every law enforcement agency in 4 states is looking for you. How long until they find us here? This location is off the books, CIA black site from the Cold War. But if Blackwell has the connections, we think he has maybe 48 hours before someone makes the connection. Then we have 48 hours to finish this. Whitmore moved to the table. Spread out documents, photographs, financial records, communications intercepts. The evidence of 6 years of investigation compressed into physical form. I've been coordinating with Ashford's team, combining your evidence with what the CIA has been collecting independently. It's damning, Phoenix. More than damning. It's airtight. Show me. For the next 2 hours, they walked through it. The convoy ambush in 2005. 12 soldiers killed because General Harrison Blackwell had ignored intelligence warnings. Not because of incompetence, because of profit. The convoy had been transporting evidence of illegal weapons sales to Afghan warlords. Blackwell had made sure the evidence never reached anyone who could act on it. The investigation that followed, the one that should have ended Blackwell's career, buried through political connections and strategic favors, through intimidation and carefully placed bribes, through the mysterious deaths of 3 key witnesses in accidents that were anything but. General Augustus Thorne, Evangeline's father, the investigator who wouldn't be bought or intimidated, who kept digging when everyone else stopped, who died of a heart attack in 2015 that autopsy reports later suggested might have been induced by exotic toxins, reports that were classified and then lost. The Syria operation, 2018, Evangeline and Abigail on a counterterrorism mission that should have been routine. Intel leaked to local militia, position compromised. Ambush that killed Abigail and almost killed Evangeline. Leak traced back to Blackwell's office, but never proven conclusively enough to prosecute. 6 years of patterns, 6 years of bodies, 6 years of General Harrison Blackwell cleaning up his mistakes by creating new ones. This is enough to put him away for life, Ashford said. Multiple counts of murder, conspiracy, treason. The JAG prosecutors will fight over who gets to try him first. Then why haven't you moved already? Evangeline asked. Because we need one more piece. Direct testimony. Someone who was there. Someone who saw it firsthand. Someone whose credibility can't be questioned. You need me to testify. Yes. In exchange, full immunity. New identity. Relocation package for you and Iris. Fresh start somewhere Blackwell's reach doesn't extend. Witness protection. Federal marshals. The whole package. Evangeline stood, walked to the window, looked out at the quiet street where oak trees cast shadows in moonlight. Thought about Iris sleeping upstairs, about the promise she'd made to Abigail. What's the timeline? Testimony before a grand jury. 3 days from now, federal courthouse in D.C., we transport you under guard. Full security. You'd be in and out in 6 hours. And Iris stays here, protected, safe until you return. No. Evangeline, no, I don't leave her. Not after what Blackwell tried today. She goes where I go, or I don't go at all. Ashford and Whitmore exchanged glances. Some silent communication passed between them. We can work with that, Ashford said finally, but you need to understand the risk. If Blackwell finds out you're testifying, he'll throw everything he has at stopping you. And everything means resources we can't match. Let him try. Phoenix, Whitmore said quietly, this isn't a mission you can shoot your way out of. This is testimony, evidence, legal process, things that take time, things that give Blackwell opportunities to act. Then we make sure he doesn't get those opportunities. How? Evangeline turned from the window. Let them see the decision in her eyes, the calculation that had been running since the moment Garrett Blackwell had spilled syrup on Iris's dress. We force his hand, draw him out, make him commit to an action he can't walk back from. You want to use yourself as bait. I want to end this, tonight, before he has time to regroup, before he can threaten Iris again, before this turns into a years-long legal battle that destroys what's left of her childhood. Agent Torres spoke up, young, maybe 30. If you're talking about provoking Blackwell into a direct confrontation, you need to understand what you're up against. He's currently at Fort Carson, surrounded by security, multiple escape routes. He could go to ground within 30 minutes of any threat. He won't run. How can you be sure? Because I know men like Blackwell. They don't believe they can lose. Not really. They think their connections will protect them. Their money, their power, their name. They've spent their entire lives being told they're special, that the rules don't apply to them, that consequences are for other people. And if you're wrong, then I'm wrong, and we proceed with the testimony. But I'm not wrong. Blackwell's ego is his weakness. We just need to exploit it. The plan came together over the next 3 hours. It was simple, dangerous. The kind of operation that had a dozen ways to fail and only one way to succeed. But simple plans were often the best ones. Evangeline would call Blackwell, offer him the file, the complete evidence, everything she had, in exchange for a face-to-face meeting. No weapons, no backup. Just two people who'd been circling each other for 6 years, finally having the conversation that should have happened in 2018 when Abigail died bleeding on a Syrian rooftop. The meeting would be public, recorded, broadcast live through channels Ashford's team controlled. Blackwell wouldn't know until it was too late, and by then he'd have said things that couldn't be unsaid, admitted to things that couldn't be denied, destroyed himself with his own words, the way powerful men always did when they thought they were smarter than everyone else in the room. He'll never agree to it, Webb said, not if he suspects a trap. He'll agree because his ego won't let him refuse, because the idea that Phoenix 9 is offering surrender will be too tempting to pass up, because men like him always think they can win when they're holding all the cards. And if he brings backup anyway, then we adapt. But he won't. His pride won't allow it. He'll want to be the one who brought down the legendary Phoenix 9, who proved that ghosts can be killed, who wrote the final chapter of a story that's haunted him for 6 years. At 2:17 a.m., Evangeline made the call. It rang 4 times before a voice answered, rough, tired, the voice of someone who hadn't slept well in days. This is General Blackwell. General, it's Evangeline Thorne. Silence, then carefully controlled. Miss Thorne, I'm surprised you're calling. Most people in your position would be running. I'm done running. I want to make a deal. I'm listening. Face to face, you and me, tomorrow morning, 6:30 a.m., Fort Carson Parade Grounds. No weapons, no backup. Just a conversation between two people who've been at war for too long. And in exchange, I give you the file, all of it, every copy, every backup, everything I have on the convoy on my father's investigation on Syria. You get to bury your secrets. I get to disappear with Iris. Everyone walks away. More silence. Longer this time. Evangeline could almost hear him thinking, weighing options, looking for the trap he knew had to be there but couldn't quite identify. Why the sudden change of heart? Because I'm tired. Because 6 years of looking over my shoulder is enough. Because Iris deserves better than a guardian who's constantly running from ghosts. Because you won. You have the resources, the connections, the power. I can't fight you forever, so I'm choosing to stop fighting. You expect me to believe Phoenix 9 is surrendering? I expect you to understand that even Phoenixes burn out eventually, that even the best operators get tired, that everyone has a breaking point. Mine is Iris. You threatened her. You made me choose between revenge and her safety. I choose her. I'll always choose her. The words hung in the air, truth wrapped in misdirection. The best lies were always built on foundations of honest emotion. 6:30 a.m., Blackwell said finally. Parade grounds. If I see anyone else, any backup, any sign this is a trap, the deal is off, and I come after you with everything I have. Understood. Just you and me. A conversation. Then it's over. Then it's over, Blackwell agreed. The line went dead. Evangeline set down the phone, looked at the team assembled around the table. Whitmore, Ashford, Torres, Webb, Reeves, all of them watching her with expressions that ranged from respect to concern to something that might have been fear. He bought it, she said. Now comes the hard part, Ashford replied, making sure he lives long enough to confess on camera before he tries to kill you. The next 4 hours were preparation. Torres set up the satellite uplink, positioned cameras at angles that would capture the parade grounds without being obvious, coordinated with news networks who'd been tipped off about a major story breaking at Fort Carson at 6:30 a.m., ensured that every word spoken would be recorded and broadcast to audiences who wouldn't be able to look away. Webb ran tactical scenarios, identified potential sniper positions, mapped escape routes, calculated response times for base security if things went wrong, positioned counter-surveillance teams to make sure Blackwell didn't bring hidden backup. Reeves hacked into Fort Carson's security systems, ensured that the meeting would be captured on official base cameras, created redundancies so that even if Blackwell tried to destroy evidence afterward, copies would exist in places he couldn't reach. And Evangeline sat with Iris, watched her sleep, thought about Abigail and General Augustus Thorne, and 67 people whose lives had ended because Phoenix 9 had been very good at her job. At 5 a.m., Whitmore found her in Iris's room. "It's time." "I know. You don't have to do this. We can proceed with the testimony. Let the legal system handle it." The legal system had 19 years to handle it. It failed. "My father died trying to work within the system. I'm not making the same mistake. This could go wrong in 100 different ways." "It could, but it won't, because I'm very good at what I do." Whitmore smiled, sad and proud at the same time. "That you are. Your father would be proud of you, Phoenix, what you've become, how you've protected Iris, the choices you've made. Would he, or would he be disappointed that his daughter became exactly what he spent his career fighting against? He'd understand that sometimes the law isn't enough, that sometimes justice requires people willing to step into darkness so others don't have to. He'd understand because he was one of those people too." Evangeline stood, checked her reflection in the small mirror above the dresser. She'd changed into civilian clothes, jeans, plain shirt, nothing that screamed military or operator or threat, just a woman who looked tired and scared and ready to surrender. "If this goes wrong," she said quietly, "make sure Iris knows I kept my promise. Make sure she understands I came back, even if it's not in the way she expected." "Nothing's going to go wrong." "You can't promise that." "No, but I can promise I'll protect her like she was my own. That if you don't come back, she'll have a family. People who knew her mother, who knew you, who will make sure she grows up understanding what you sacrificed." Evangeline nodded, couldn't speak past the lump in her throat. She kissed Iris's forehead. The girl stirred but didn't wake, still holding that stuffed rabbit. Then she walked out, down the stairs, out to the vehicle that would take her back to Fort Carson, back to the parade grounds where this had all started. The drive took 45 minutes. Dawn was breaking when they arrived, the sky painted in colors that reminded Evangeline of Syria, of Kandahar, of a dozen other places where she'd watched the sunrise and wondered if she'd live to see it set. The parade grounds were empty, just flat open space designed for formations and ceremonies, for displaying military precision and power. General Harrison Blackwell was already there, standing in the center, alone, no visible backup, wearing his dress uniform, full medals, every ribbon perfectly aligned. A 60-year-old man who'd spent 4 decades building a career on corpses and thought no one would ever dig deep enough to find them. Evangeline got out of the vehicle, started walking, slow, steady, hands visible, no weapons. Just a woman approaching a general who'd killed her father and her best friend and thought he'd gotten away with it. They stopped 10 feet apart, close enough to talk, far enough to react if violence started. "You came," Blackwell said. "I gave my word." "Your word, as if that means anything from someone like you." "Someone like me. You mean an operator who followed orders? Who did what her country asked? Who believed she was serving something larger than herself? I mean a killer, a ghost who murdered 67 people and called it service. 67 people who would have killed innocent civilians if I hadn't stopped them. 67 terrorists and warlords and traffickers who earned their deaths. Every single one." Blackwell smiled. It wasn't a kind expression. "And you think that makes you better than me? You think your body count is somehow more righteous because you had official sanction?" "No, I think my body count was necessary. Yours was profitable. There's a difference. Is there? We both killed for our country. We both did things that had to stay secret. We both made sacrifices that no one will ever acknowledge." "Sacrifices? Is that what you call selling out American soldiers? Sacrificing them? Those 12 men were going to expose a weapons program that could have won us Afghanistan, a program certain people in Washington decided was too dangerous to continue. They had to be stopped. They were your soldiers, your responsibility. You sent them into an ambush knowing they'd die. I made a tactical decision, one operation, 12 lives, in exchange for protecting a strategic asset worth hundreds of millions and potentially thousands of American lives down the line. And my father, was he a tactical decision too?" Blackwell's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, acknowledgement. General Augustus Thorne was a good officer. Too good. He couldn't accept that sometimes command requires difficult choices, that sometimes individual lives matter less than strategic objectives. He was going to expose the convoy decision, going to ruin careers, undermine confidence in leadership at a critical moment in the war. He had to be stopped. So you had him killed, made it look like a heart attack. I made a phone call. Someone else handled the details. That's how these things work when you operate at my level. You don't pull triggers yourself. You just point them in the right direction. Evangeline felt something cold settle in her chest. The confirmation she'd spent 6 years seeking. The words that Blackwell didn't realize were being broadcast to news networks across the country, being recorded on official base cameras, being witnessed by people who would never be able to unhear them. And Lieutenant Abigail Crane, my spotter, my partner, the woman whose daughter I've been raising for 6 years, was she a tactical decision too? She was collateral damage. Wrong place, wrong time. Your mission in Syria was compromised because you were getting too close to tracing the convoy leak back to my office. I leaked your position to local militia. I expected them to kill both of you. The fact that you survived was unfortunate. Unfortunate. From my perspective, yes. From yours, I suppose you'd call it lucky. Though looking at you now, I'm not sure survival was the blessing you think it was. You spent 6 years hiding, pretending to be something you're not, raising someone else's child because your partner died for your mistakes. My mistakes? You killed her. You murdered Abigail Crane in cold blood. And you stand here in that uniform with those medals and call it tactical. I call it command. I call it the price of leadership. I call it the weight that people like you will never understand because you only followed orders. You never gave them. You never had to make the choices that haunt generals. Do you lose sleep over it, over the 12 soldiers, over my father, over Abigail? Blackwell looked at her, really looked, saw past the civilian clothes to the operator underneath. No, he said quietly, I don't lose sleep over them because I know I was right. I know that hard choices in service of larger objectives are what separate great generals from good ones. I know that history will vindicate me even if the present wants to condemn me. History? You think history is going to vindicate murdering American soldiers for profit? I think history is written by victors, and I intend to be one. He reached into his jacket. Evangeline tensed, ready to move. But Blackwell didn't pull a weapon. He pulled out a phone, held it up. You wanted to record this conversation, didn't you? Thought you'd get me to confess on camera? Thought you'd be clever. Evangeline said nothing. I had my people sweep the area an hour ago. Found 3 of your cameras. Disabled 2. Left one running because I wanted you to think your plan was working. Wanted you confident. Wanted you to believe you'd won, he smiled, the expression of a predator who'd been playing with its food. But you didn't win. You can't win because I have resources you can't imagine, connections you'll never understand. I've already made calls, filed reports, created a narrative. By the time this conversation ends, you'll be officially designated a domestic terrorist who attacked a ranking general, who threatened violence, who forced me to defend myself. I'm unarmed. Are you? Let's check. Blackwell moved, fast for 60 years old, reached for the sidearm at his hip, the weapon he'd promised not to bring. The lie that revealed everything. But Evangeline was faster. She'd been faster than everyone for 8 years, faster than Taliban fighters in Helmand province, faster than ISIS commanders in Syria, faster than 67 people who'd thought they had the advantage until the moment they realized Phoenix 9 had already won. She closed the distance before Blackwell's finger found the trigger. Her left hand caught his wrist, twisted at the precise angle that sent pain shooting up the arm and forced the grip to open. Her right hand struck the nerve cluster at his elbow, the radial nerve, the strike that made the arm go dead and useless. The gun fell to the ground. Blackwell screamed, rage and pain and disbelief mixing into a sound that echoed across the empty parade grounds. He swung with his left hand, a wild punch born of desperation. Evangeline absorbed it on her shoulder, responded with a controlled strike to his solar plexus. Just enough force to fold him over, not enough to cause permanent damage. He went down, knees hitting the ground hard, gasping for air that wouldn't come, looking up at her with eyes that finally understood what he'd been poking. It's over, Evangeline said quietly. Not because I beat you, because you beat yourself. Around them, vehicles emerged from positions they'd held since before dawn. Military police, base security, witnesses who'd watched the entire confrontation, who'd seen a general pull a weapon on an unarmed civilian, who'd heard him confess to murder on live television, even if he thought he'd disabled the cameras. A young sergeant stepped forward, mid-20s, combat patches on his shoulder. General Harrison Blackwell, I'm placing you under arrest. Article 118, murder. Article 134, conduct unbecoming an officer. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court-martial. You can't arrest me. I have immunity. I have protection from the Pentagon. You have nothing, the sergeant said. His voice was steady, certain. Everything you said was broadcast live. Every news network, every base camera, everyone heard you. Everyone saw you draw a weapon on an unarmed woman. Sir, the word came out like an insult. Two MPs moved forward. They secured Blackwell's hands behind his back with zip ties, helped him to his feet, started leading him toward a waiting vehicle. Blackwell twisted to look back at Evangeline. This isn't over. You hear me? I have people, connections. They'll make you pay for this. No, this is over. It ended the moment you thought you were smarter than everyone else. The moment you let your ego convince you that Phoenix 9 was surrendering. The moment you confessed to murdering my father and my best friend on live television because you couldn't resist explaining how clever you thought you were. You tricked me. I gave you rope. You chose to hang yourself with it. She watched them take him away, watched the vehicle disappear, watched the end of a 19-year nightmare. Then she turned, started walking back toward the vehicle where Whitmore waited. Phoenix, he called. You did it. It's over. Not yet. One more thing. She found Captain Garrett Blackwell standing at the edge of the parade grounds, watching his father being arrested, watching his entire world collapse in real time. He looked up as she approached. I'm sorry, he said, for this morning, for what I said, for what I did, for all of it. Are you sorry you did it, or sorry you got caught? Both. Neither. I don't know. I thought he was a hero. My whole life that's what I believed, and now I find out he's a murderer, that everything I built my career on was a lie. Evangeline studied him, this 29-year-old captain who'd started this entire chain of events by spilling syrup on an 8-year-old's dress. What are you going to do now? She asked. I don't know. Resign, probably. Face whatever charges come from this morning. Try to figure out who I am when I'm not General Blackwell's son. Don't resign, he looked up surprised. The Army needs officers who understand that rank doesn't make you right. That power doesn't excuse you from consequences. That honor means something more than medals and ribbons. Your father forgot those lessons. You still have time to learn them. Why would you help me after everything I did? Because Abigail Crane believed people could change, could choose to be better than they were, and because someone gave me 5 seconds this morning that could have ended very differently. I'm returning the favor. She started to walk away. Garrett called after her. Phoenix 9, thank you for not killing him, for choosing justice over revenge, for proving that even ghosts can be merciful. Evangeline didn't turn around, just kept walking toward the vehicle, toward Whitmore, toward the safe house where Iris was waiting, toward whatever came next for a Phoenix who'd finally finished burning. The next 3 months were a blur of testimony and depositions and legal proceedings. The trial was televised. The evidence was overwhelming. The verdict was never in doubt. Guilty on all counts, multiple life sentences, no possibility of parole. The families of the 12 soldiers from the convoy received formal apologies and compensation. General Augustus Thorne was posthumously exonerated and honored with a memorial service. Lieutenant Abigail Crane was awarded the Silver Star for her service in Syria, and her daughter Iris received her medal at a ceremony that made national news. And Evangeline Thorne became someone else. Not Phoenix 9, not a ghost, not an operator hiding from her past, just a woman trying to build a future. Fort Carson offered her a position, chief marksmanship instructor, teaching new soldiers the skills that would keep them alive, passing on knowledge earned through 8 years of operations and 67 lives, ended with precision and purpose. She accepted. The training range was different from the parade grounds where she'd confronted Blackwell. Quieter, more focused. a place where the sound of gunfire meant learning instead of killing. Evangeline stood behind a line of recruits, watching them shoot, correcting stances, adjusting grips. Instructor Thorne, she turned, a young female recruit, 19 maybe, fresh out of basic training. Yes, is it true you have 67 confirmed kills? The question that always came eventually. It's true. That's incredible. You must be so proud. Evangeline looked at her, saw herself at 19, saw the belief that killing for your country was glory instead of burden. Proud is the wrong word. Those 67 kills represent 67 failures. Failures how? Failures of diplomacy, failures of intelligence, failures of prevention. Every person I killed was someone we couldn't stop any other way. Someone whose death was necessary because all the other options had failed. That's not something to be proud of. That's something to learn from. The recruit looked confused. Then why teach us to shoot? Because sometimes shooting is necessary. Because evil exists and talking doesn't always stop it. Because if you're going to carry a weapon, you need to be good enough that when you use it, you don't create more problems than you solve. But mostly because I want you to come home alive. And coming home alive means being so good at your job that you never have to wonder if you made the right choice. The recruit nodded, processed, turned back to her rifle with a different expression, more thoughtful. Evangeline watched her shoot, watched all of them. These young soldiers who would deploy to places where decisions got complicated. She couldn't protect them from what they'd experience, couldn't shield them from the weight of choices made under fire. But she could teach them, could pass on lessons learned in blood and sand, could make sure that when they pulled triggers, they did it with precision and purpose and the understanding that every shot mattered. Colonel Nathaniel Whitmore found her as the training session ended. "How's she doing?" He nodded toward those recruits. "Getting better. Still has that thing young soldiers have, that belief that they're invincible. You had that once." "I did. Syria beat it out of me." "You look settled, Phoenix. More at peace than I've seen you in years." "I'm trying. Some days are easier than others. Some days I hear gunfire and I'm back in Kandahar. Some days Iris asks about her mother, and I don't know how to explain that Abigail died because I wasn't fast enough. But we're managing, building something normal, or as normal as it gets. Abigail would be proud of you, of what you've built, how you've protected Iris, the way you've honored her memory. I hope so. I tell Iris stories about her mother, about missions we ran together, about how she could read wind better than anyone, about how she saved my life more times than I can count. You saved her daughter. That counts. Does it? Or am I just doing what I should have done 6 years ago?" Whitmore didn't answer. Some questions didn't have good answers. They just had to be carried. They stood in silence for a moment, two people who'd spent decades in shadows learning how to live in sunlight again. "Garrett Blackwell is teaching at West Point," Whitmore said finally. "Ethics course, military justice. He's become something of an advocate for reforming how the Army handles corruption investigations. Good for him, using his father's crimes to build something better. He sends his regards, says if you're ever in the area, he'd like to buy you coffee. Maybe, someday, when enough time has passed." Whitmore smiled. "Phoenix? Yes. Do you ever miss it? The operations, the missions, the clarity." Evangeline thought about it. Really thought. "Sometimes, when things get complicated, when Iris is struggling or having nightmares, when I'm dealing with homework and parent-teacher conferences. But then I remember why I left. Remember the weight of 67 kills. Remember Abigail bleeding out. Remember my father dying alone. And I remember that I chose this life, chose normal, chose raising Iris over hunting ghosts, chose being human over being a weapon. No regrets. About leaving, no. About how long it took me to leave every single day." Murphy's Diner at 6:30 a.m. looked exactly the same as it had 3 months ago. Same checkered floor, same vintage pendant lights, same smell of coffee and bacon. But the way people looked at Evangeline when she walked in had changed. No more invisibility. Now they saw Phoenix 9, the operator who'd brought down a general, the woman who'd been on every news channel, the legend who'd proved that ghosts were real. Evangeline missed being invisible, but she'd made peace with visibility, had learned that sometimes being seen was the price of justice. They sat at a booth near the window, not the corner, not hidden, right where sunlight streamed through glass and illuminated everything. A deliberate choice, a statement that they had nothing to hide anymore. Iris had her usual, waffles with 4 syrup cups arranged in perfect rows. The ritual unchanged, the small piece of order in chaos. Miss Evie? Yes. Mrs. Patterson said, we're learning about heroes in school next week. People who did brave things. Can I talk about you? Evangeline set down her coffee, looked at this 8-year-old girl who'd lost her mother and gained a guardian who was still learning how to be what she needed. I'm not a hero, Iris. You stopped a bad man. You made sure justice happened. You protected people. That sounds like a hero. Heroes don't have 67 kills. Heroes don't spend 6 years hiding. Heroes don't make the mistakes I made. Mom's letters say heroes are just people who keep trying even when they're scared, even when they make mistakes. Your mother was very wise. She said you were the bravest person she ever knew, not because you weren't scared, but because you were terrified and you did it anyway. Evangeline felt tears building, pushed them back. Abigail had always seen too much, had always known exactly what to say. If you want to talk about me at school, that's fine, but tell them the whole truth, not just the victories. Tell them about the mistakes, the costs, the weight. Tell them that being brave doesn't mean being fearless. It means being scared and choosing to act anyway. I will. I'll tell them everything, the good parts and the hard parts, because that's what makes you real, not just a story. They ate in comfortable silence, the kind that came from knowing each other well enough that words weren't always necessary. Evangeline's phone buzzed, text from an unknown number. New threat emerging. Classified briefing requested. Your expertise needed. This is not a recall. This is a consultation. 48 hours. Your choice. Director Ashford. Evangeline read it twice. Thought about what it meant. The past reaching for the present. The ghost being asked to haunt one more mission. She deleted the message. Some doors needed to stay closed. Some chapters needed to end. Some phoenixes needed to stay ash instead of rising again. Everything okay? Iris asked. Everything's fine, sweetheart. Just someone asking me to do something I don't do anymore. Are you sure you look worried? Evangeline smiled, reached across the table, took the small hand that still smelled like syrup in childhood. I'm sure, because I made a promise to your mother, and I made a promise to you. And those promises are more important than anything else. You're my mission now, my only mission. Iris smiled, the real smile that made everything else worthwhile. Want to hear about my science project? It's about birds, specifically phoenixes. I'm doing a whole presentation on the mythology and the symbolism. I'd love to hear about it. And for the next 30 minutes, Evangeline listened to an 8-year-old explain phoenix mythology with enthusiasm. Listen to stories about birds rising from ash and being reborn and starting over. Listen to Iris describe hope and renewal and second chances. The sun climbed higher, the diner filled with soldiers and civilians starting their days. Life continued its relentless forward march. And somewhere in the middle of all of it, Evangeline Thorne sat with Iris and understood something she'd been missing for 6 years. Phoenix 9 had died on that Syrian rooftop with Abigail Crane. What had emerged from those ashes wasn't a ghost or a weapon or an operator, a guardian, a teacher, a woman who'd chosen to protect instead of destroy, to build instead of burn, to live instead of survive. The Phoenix had risen, but not the way anyone expected, not with fire and violence and vengeance, with patience and love and the understanding that some battles were won by choosing not to fight. Some victories came from walking away. They finished breakfast, walked out into morning sunlight that felt warmer than it had in years, got in the car and drove toward a school where Iris would learn about heroes. And in a government office somewhere, Director Victoria Ashford deleted the message thread and made a note in Evangeline Thorne's file. Status retired. Consultation declined. Phoenix 9 has earned her peace. Do not contact again unless the world is ending. And maybe not even then. Some legends deserve to rest. The file was marked classified, filed away. Forgotten by everyone except the people who needed to remember that once a woman named Evangeline Thorne had been the best at what she did, had accumulated 67 kills in the service of her country, had lost her father and her partner, and nearly lost herself, and then had chosen something harder than killing, had chosen to live, to raise a child, to teach instead of hunt, to be human instead of weapon. The Phoenix had burned, had risen, had finally found peace, and that more than any mission or medal or body count was the legacy that mattered. The story worth telling, The truth that Iris would carry forward when she was old enough to understand that heroes weren't people who never fell. They were people who fell and got back up, who made mistakes and learned from them, who carried weight and kept walking anyway. Evangeline Thorne was home. Finally, completely. And the ghost that had haunted her for 6 years could finally rest. The Phoenix had done its burning. Now it was time to build, and building it turned out was infinitely harder and infinitely more rewarding than anything Phoenix 9 had ever accomplished in 8 years of operations across 15 countries. This was the mission that mattered, the one without exit strategy or extraction plan, the one that required showing up every single day and choosing love over fear, the only mission worth completing. And for the first time in 6 years, Evangeline Thorne believed she might actually succeed.